Tears streamed down Maya Johnson's face as the sharp growl of a police dog echoes in her ears. Standing alone in the middle of the park, the blind 20-year-old feels fear gripping her chest. This was supposed to be her safe space, a place where she laughed with strangers and found freedom despite her darkness. But today was different. The stares of onlookers pierced her like daggers as she struggled to understand why this was happening to her. Why was she the target? Where was her father, James, the man who always protected her? What had she done to deserve this humiliation? Maya Johnson, a 20-year-old blind black girl, is the heart of her father's world. Her father, James Johnson, is a well-known philanthropist in the community, admired for his wealth and generosity. Together, they visit the local park every day, a haven of life and laughter. For Maya, the park isn't just a place to relax, it's a canvas of freedom where she feels connected to the world through the sounds of children playing, the rustle of leaves, and the occasional friendly conversations with white boys and girls she meets there. James never leaves her side, guiding her steps and making sure she feels safe and loved. Their bond is unshakable, built on trust, care, and a mutual understanding of navigating life's challenges. Maya's innocence and her ability to connect with people, regardless of race or background, make her a beacon of light in an often divided world. But beneath the park's vibrant surface lies an unspoken tension. While Maya is blissfully unaware of the subtle prejudices that linger, not everyone views her with the same kindness. This ordinary day at the park is about to take a dark turn, one that will test the strength of their bond and expose the shadows of injustice hiding in plain sight. The sun was shining brightly as Maya sat quietly on her favorite bench, feeling the warmth on her face. Her father, James, had just stepped out for a quick errand, leaving her with a gentle promise, "I'll be back in 30 minutes, sweetheart. Stay right here." Maya nodded with a smile, clutching her walking cane. But after a few minutes, the serene sounds of the park called to her, and she decided to take a short stroll. With her cane tapping lightly along the paved path, she felt a rare sense of independence, letting the fresh air fill her lungs. As Maya slowly made her way along the park, a figure in a stiff police uniform appeared, Officer Mark Wilson. His face was stern, and his German shepherd stood rigid at his side, its ears alert. Mark scanned the park, his gaze landing on Maya. Something about her vulnerability caught his attention, and his expression shifted to one of cold calculation. With a subtle hand gesture, he gave a command to his dog. The German shepherd let out a deep, menacing bark, startling Maya. She froze, clutching her cane tightly as her body trembled. The bark grew louder and more aggressive, and tears welled up in Maya's eyes. "Please, stop," she cried, her voice breaking. Her distress drew the attention of nearby park-goers, but instead of rushing to help, a group of white onlookers whispered among themselves, smirking. One woman chuckled, "What's she even doing here?" Another added mockingly, "Maybe she's lost. Poor thing, can't even see where she's going." Their laughter cut through Maya like shards of glass. Maya's cries grew louder, her body shaking as the dog continued to bark. The officer made no effort to call it off, watching the scene unfold with an almost smug detachment. Maya felt trapped, her cane tapping helplessly against the ground, her pleas drowned out by the dog's snarls and the crowd's cruel laughter. What should have been a peaceful moment turned into a nightmare as Maya stood utterly alone, humiliated, and terrified. James Johnson had just returned from his errand, eager to reunite with his daughter. But as he approached the park, he was struck by the sight of a small crowd gathered near his bench. His heart sank when he heard Maya's sobs, and the sight of her, her face tear-streaked and her body trembling, nearly stopped him in his tracks. "Maya!" James called out, rushing toward her. The moment she heard her father's voice, Maya's tear-filled eyes shot up, relief flooding her face. But her fear was still evident in the way she clung to her cane, unable to shake off the trauma she had just experienced. James's gaze shifted to the officer standing nearby, his German shepherd still at his side. The officer's arms were crossed, his expression one of indifference, as if nothing was wrong. "What the hell happened here?" James demanded, his voice tight with anger. His eyes locked onto Officer Mark Wilson. Why is my daughter in tears? Why did you let your dog scare her like that? Officer Wilson shrugged, his tone dismissive. It was an accident. The dog just got a little excited. It's no big deal. James's fury ignited. No big deal? My daughter was terrified, humiliated in front of all these people, and you stand there acting like it's nothing? He stepped closer, his voice growing louder, but trying to remain in control for Maya's sake. Maya, still shaking, felt her heart pound in her chest. She couldn't believe what had just happened to her. She had trusted this park as a safe space, but now it felt like everything she knew was shattered. Her father's protective embrace was all that kept her grounded. The bystanders watched in silence, some whispering, others exchanging uneasy glances. But no one stepped forward to help. James was relentless. You've humiliated my daughter, and I'm not letting this go. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. There are consequences for this kind of behavior. The officer's eyes narrowed. Go ahead. I'm just doing my job. His voice was cold and condescending, the weight of his badge making him feel invincible. But James wasn't intimidated. He placed a firm hand on Maya's shoulder and faced the officer squarely. Your job is to protect, not harm. And I will make sure you are held accountable for what happened here today. The tension between them was palpable, the crowd growing more uncomfortable as the argument escalated. But no one moved to stop it. James Johnson knew that the only way to ensure his daughter's ordeal didn't go unnoticed was to take action. After much thought and deliberation, he filed a formal complaint with the police department, accusing Officer Mark Wilson of misconduct and racial bias. He didn't want this to be swept under the rug or forgotten. Maya had been humiliated, and the officer had abused his power. He would not let that go unchallenged. With the support of his wealth and influence, James hired a high-profile lawyer, Daniel Roberts, known for his relentless pursuit of justice in cases involving civil rights and police misconduct. James needed someone who would not just represent them legally, but who would also bring public attention to the case. It wasn't just about punishing one officer, it was about sending a message that this kind of behavior was unacceptable. James and Daniel prepared for the long battle ahead, navigating the legal system step by step. They filed all the necessary paperwork, including an official FIR, First Information Report, detailing the officer's actions. They hoped this would lead to an internal investigation, but they knew it would take time, and that the public would need to stay engaged for any real change to happen. The first piece of evidence came from a park visitor who had been filming when the incident occurred. The video showed Officer Wilson's dog lunging at Maya, followed by the officer's clear instruction for the dog to bark aggressively. Maya's reaction was raw and heartbreaking. She was visibly frightened, stumbling backward, unable to protect herself. This footage became the cornerstone of their case, capturing the officer's actions in real time. As the video went viral, the story picked up steam, attracting the attention of national news outlets. Debates about racism, police brutality, and the abuse of power took center stage. The footage painted a stark image of the officer's behavior, and soon, people from across the country began speaking out. Some were quick to defend the officer, claiming that his dog was simply overzealous due to bad training, an argument that quickly gained traction among those unwilling to acknowledge racial biases. But the majority of the public condemned the officer's actions, calling it what it was, an abuse of power driven by racial prejudice. Articles, social media posts, and interviews flooded the media, fueling protests and conversations about the ways in which black people, especially black children, are often treated unfairly. Meanwhile, Maya was grappling with her own emotions. The trauma of what happened still haunted her. She couldn't shake the images of the officer's cold, commanding voice and the way she'd felt helpless in that moment. But as the case gained more attention, she began to find her voice. Despite her fears, Maya felt a growing sense of responsibility to speak out. She knew her experience could make a difference, and she was determined to use it as a platform to stand up for justice. In an emotional press conference, Maya spoke directly to the media. What happened to me wasn't right, she said, her voice shaking but resolute. No one should be afraid just because of who they are. I believe in justice, and I believe in equality. We have to do better. Her words resonated with countless others, particularly young people who had experienced similar situations or had witnessed acts of injustice. Maya's courage was a turning point in the case, and she became a symbol of hope for those fighting against systemic discrimination. The day of the trial arrived, and the courtroom was filled with anticipation. It wasn't just about Maya's case anymore, it had become a symbol of the larger fight against systemic racism in law enforcement. James sat in the front row, his heart heavy with the weight of the moment. Maya, though still shaken, was determined to see this through. She had found her strength, and today, they would take another step toward justice. Maya's lawyer, Daniel Roberts, began his argument with a powerful statement: this isn't just about one officer's actions. This is about the pattern of discrimination that continues to plague our society, especially within law enforcement. Officer Wilson's behavior was not an isolated incident, it is part of a much larger issue that we must confront. Roberts meticulously laid out the case against Officer Wilson, highlighting the racial bias that was clearly evident in his actions. He pointed to the officer's cold demeanor, his choice to use his police dog as a weapon of intimidation, and the way he disregarded Maya's vulnerability as a young, blind girl. The argument was compelling, supported by the video footage and eyewitness accounts that painted a clear picture of intentional cruelty. The defense team, however, tried to downplay the gravity of the incident. They argued that the situation had been a misunderstanding, that Officer Wilson had not intended to harm Maya, and that the dog's behavior was simply the result of poor training. They tried to deflect attention away from the racial implications of the case, instead claiming that the officer had acted out of concern for safety. It was a weak defense, built on an attempt to shift blame away from the officer's deliberate actions. But the evidence was too strong. The video footage captured Officer Wilson giving a clear command to his dog, followed by the dog's aggressive barking and lunging at Maya. Witnesses testified that they had seen the officer act with intent to scare her, with no concern for her safety or well-being. There was no room for doubt, this was not an accident, and it was not an isolated incident. When James took the stand, the emotional weight of the case became even more evident. With his voice breaking, he shared the profound pain he had felt as a father, watching his daughter be treated with such cruelty. He spoke about the deep emotional scars that Maya would carry with her for the rest of her life. "I've spent my life fighting for others," James said, his eyes locked on the judge. "But nothing prepares you for the moment when your own child becomes a victim of this kind of hatred. We need accountability, and we need change." His words resonated throughout the courtroom, and the judge could feel the gravity of the situation. After hearing all the evidence and testimonies, the judge retired to deliberate. The room was silent with tension, each person wondering how the case would conclude. When the judge returned, his verdict was clear and decisive. Officer Wilson was found guilty of misconduct. The room erupted in a mix of relief and disbelief. The officer would be suspended from duty, required to pay a significant fine, and undergo mandatory racial sensitivity training before being allowed to return to the force. While it wasn't the harshest sentence imaginable, it was a significant step toward accountability. Maya, though still processing everything, felt a sense of closure. It wasn't just about punishment, it was about sending a message. The fight for justice wasn't over, but this was a win for Maya, for her family, and for anyone who had ever been treated unjustly because of the color of their skin. It was a victory that would inspire others to speak out and demand change. In the wake of the trial's verdict, the ripple effects of Maya's case spread far beyond the courtroom. The police department, once reluctant to acknowledge the systemic issues within their ranks, was forced to confront the reality of the situation. The department issued a public apology, acknowledging the harm caused by Officer Wilson's actions and promising to do better. The chief of police spoke in a press conference, stating, "We failed in our duty to protect and serve. This incident does not reflect the values we hold as a department, and we are committed to changing the way we interact with diverse communities." As part of their efforts to make amends, the department launched a new initiative aimed at training officers in cultural competency and diversity awareness, ensuring they approach every situation with respect for people of all backgrounds. The park management also took swift action. They issued their own public apology, acknowledging the pain caused by the incident. In their statement, the park's director said, "We deeply regret the distress caused to Maya and her family. We are taking immediate steps to ensure that our park is a safe and welcoming space for everyone, regardless of their background." To back this up, they introduced new policies, including better staff training, more visible security measures, and a commitment to creating an environment where all visitors can feel safe. James Johnson, using his wealth and influence, took it a step further. He launched a community program dedicated to promoting unity and combating racial prejudice. The initiative brought together people from all walks of life, different races, religions, and backgrounds, to engage in conversations, workshops, and activities that promoted understanding and empathy. James used his resources to bring in educators, activists, and leaders who could guide the community in creating meaningful change. Despite the trauma she had endured, Maya found the strength to become an advocate for equality. She shared her story at schools and local gatherings and through social media, using her voice to raise awareness about the importance of standing up against injustice. Maya knew that while she couldn't undo the pain, she could help others understand the harmful impact of racial prejudice and encourage them to take action when they witnessed it. Slowly, the local community began to heal. People came together to challenge racism in their everyday lives, whether in the workplace, schools, or at home. They began to recognize that they all had a part to play in making the world a more inclusive place, one where everyone could feel valued and respected. Maya's story sparked a change, not just in her town, but in the hearts and minds of those who heard it. Maya's journey, from the pain of humiliation to the empowerment of standing up for what's right, carries a powerful message. Racism is not just an individual problem, it's a societal issue. It requires everyone to take responsibility and act with kindness and understanding. Through her story, Maya showed that while personal acts of prejudice harm individuals, they are also reflective of a greater societal problem that we all must face. She turned her personal pain into strength, becoming an advocate for unity and change. Instead of allowing her fear and humiliation to define her, she used it to inspire others to reflect on their own biases and take steps toward creating a more inclusive world. Maya's healing became the catalyst for change within her community, where old barriers of misunderstanding began to fall. As Maya continues to share her story, it's not just about her, it's a call to action for all of us. This isn't just Maya's story, it's a call to action for all of us. It's time to break the cycle of prejudice and create a world where everyone feels safe and valued. This is a story that transcends one individual. It's about the collective responsibility we have to make our society better, fairer, and more compassionate. Maya's story serves as a powerful reminder of the lasting impact of racism and the importance of standing up for what's right. Share Maya's story to spread awareness about the damage caused by prejudice and help others understand the importance of compassion. Have you ever seen someone stand up against injustice? What did it teach you? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going and inspire others to act. If you were moved by Maya's journey, watch another video about inspiring acts of courage and resilience. Together, we can create a world of equality and kindness.